this with our panel. Tia Mitchell is here. She is, of course, the Washington correspondent for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Also, Republican strategist Mark Bednar is here as well as Congressman Joe Crowley. They went to the cameras differently before I introduced you. Two bald guys, but both good looking. One Republican, one Democrat. All right. Tia, let's start with you. We're in a kind of an interesting position here because the Trump administration, President Trump ran on this idea of America first, no foreign intervention. And now you have senators like Mark Wayne Mullen saying, well, except for this particular instance. Has he done enough? Has the president done enough to sell this to the American people?
I don't think so. I mean, we are supposed to be, the people who are plugged in. We're journalists, former elected officials, former strategists on the inside, and we're having a hard time making heads or tails. There have been a lot of mixed messages from the president, from his top advisors, from the Secretary of Defense. So if we, the people in the know, don't have a clear understanding, then what do we expect the regular average American at home to understand while we're telling them their sons and daughters could be sent to war? I think that's the biggest issue for President Trump, is that we are looking at war. We are looking at a rising number of young people most likely being killed on foreign territory, and people don't have a clear understanding as to why.
So, Mark, you're the Republican at the table. Tell me, what's your impression of what the purpose of this conflict is?
Well, to say that this is somehow contrary to what the president promised on the campaign trail, I don't really agree with that assessment, because he's always been about swift, decisive action. We saw that in the Soleimani killing in his first term. We saw that in the first go about in Iran last summer. So the fact that this is kind of a already swift and decisive actions, that's a good thing. And the idea that they don't want to have a long protracted war, and that is a stated goal that they publicly stated, that's really important too. So I think that this completely conforms to President Trump's idea of decisive, fast action in order to keep Americans safe.
So, Congressman, you've been around this a couple of times. There's always the hope that these situations are quick and seamless, and you get in and out and it's over with. It often doesn't play itself out that way.
Quite often, more likely than not, it doesn't work out that way. We know that this has the potential of growing in terms of the conflagration that could happen here regionally, the instability there. I think really what the president has done is, putting aside the American people, he hasn't really communicated to his base, to MAGA, as to why we have to be going into another endless war potentially in the Middle East. I think that's his real issue here. And I think, we all like lapdogs. I would love to have a lapdog that would stay on my lap. But the Republican-led House and Senate are giving a bad name to lapdogs. I mean, they're just kneeling down to the president. Every authority that they have, or any authority they have in terms of oversight, and now we're just stretching that out now to this. This was an act of war. You decapitated the leader of this country. The president himself has said this is about regime change. Iranians, take control, take back your government. This is your only chance. That's what he's basically saying to them. It's not, I'm not saying that, he's saying that.
But what's super helpful here by the Trump administration, and I say this as a Article 1 guy, just like you, Joe, but the fact that they briefed the Gang of Eight prior to the strike, that they're today briefing the Gang of Eight, which is weird, by the way, in the Capitol, the SCIF, the classified area where you get all briefings, it's near a bunch of rooms that reporters all congregate in. So that to me is weird. But aside from that,
it's on a different floor, though.
Yeah, but it's in a funnel. It's on that staircase. But the fact that they're keeping engaged with Gang of Eight, with the House and the Senate tomorrow, that's important. And as we've seen, the Congress does deserve to be informed. They want answers, and the fact that they're staying engaged on this, that's a really big plus up by the Trump administration.
Tia, I wonder, though, politically, there's kind of a weird Venn diagram of opposition to this type of foreign intervention, right? I mean, you've got far righties and far lefties that hate this idea of the United States going into these foreign conflicts. And you already have a situation where the president's approval rating has taken quite a bit of a hit. If you're a Republican and you're running in the 2026 midterms, do you want to run on this idea of regime change in Iran? Is that something that is going to be a good sell for voters in the midterms?
Not if you look at just about any polling. When you ask voters what they care about the most and how they're making their decisions on Election Day, it has been affordability top of mind. And maybe second is immigration. But that even, those two top issues have nothing to do with bombing, in the Middle East. And so I do think candidates in these tough races, particularly Republicans who do know their base is split, they are going to have a tough time, again, explaining it. We know that, yes, foreign intervention, a lot of times presidents have been able to get Americans on board. George W. Bush did it with the war in Iraq, you know. He did it with selling the shock and awe campaign. Even years later, it came back to not be a great justification, but in real time, voters were behind him. We don't have that happening right now, and it's already showing up in the polls.
All right, let's change topics now, because in just the last half an hour or so, the Republicans on the House Oversight Committee have released every minute of the depositions of both Bill and Hillary Clinton that took place in Chappaqua last week. I was in Chappaqua while this all took place. Congressman, I wonder, do you think that the Clintons and what came out of this more than 10 hours of deposition between the two of them, will this help move the Epstein investigation forward?
I haven't reviewed or heard or seen the release of the transcripts. But what I can determine as of last Friday, it seems to be a nothing burger at this point in time. No big revelations at this point. Again, without having seen what they released today, on how they released it, in what context and what that they've been released. I do think, though, that the call by the former president and the former first lady to release all the documents is something that will never go away. If the Trump administration thinks that somehow what they're doing now is going to some way obscure the need to release, it's not going away. People want to see what has not been released so far.
So, Mark, the fact that we have video of a former president sitting in front of a congressional deposition under subpoena, does that put pressure on President Trump that he could find himself in a similar situation somewhere down the road?
Well, I mean, should Democrats, for instance, should they take over the House in November? Jamie Raskin, who's going to be oversight chair, he promised to impeach President
Garcia will be oversight chair. Raskin's on judiciary now.
Right.
Yeah.
But Raskin, he'll be a part of any sort of impeachment push.
Oversight in general.
And he wanted to impeach President Trump before he was even inaugurated. So to say that, like, Democrats are going to try to leave any stone unturned, I think they're going to be very aggressive no matter what. I don't think that the depositions that had occurred over the past weekend, that I don't think changes how Democrats' posture towards President Trump will be over the course of the next couple of years, and even when he's out of office.
Okay. All right. We're going to have to leave it there. Tia, Mark, Joe, sorry about the ball crack at the beginning.
All right.
That was me.
Harry.
I shouldn't have done that. Yeah, I'll take it. All right. Thank you guys for being here. Still to come.